All across America, the essential people are demanding a New Deal. Well, they call me the deal maker.
So, as you likely know by now, Joe Kennedy III is challenging Ed Markey for Senate in Massachusetts. I've covered this race a couple times already in past videos. Joe Kennedy is he's a Kennedy. He's only in this race because he's a Kennedy. He is pretending to be something that he's not. So he has a very pro-corporate, very status quo record in Congress. He is now pretending that he is to the left of Ed Markey, which is just absolutely hilarious. And Ed Markey right now, I'm going to get to, how he's doing in the polling. Looks pretty good for Ed Markey at the moment. I'm also going to get to a couple clips from a recent debate between Ed Markey and Joe Kennedy that happened on the same day that Kamala Harris was announced as the VP. So this debate was, completely ignored. But I'll get to a couple clips from that. But first, there is a campaign ad that everybody's talking about. Ed Markey's new campaign ad. It is fantastic. So let me just play this for you, and we will discuss that before moving on to the other issues.
There's an invisible contract we all signed at birth. A promise. Every hour we work means longer days of freedom and security. It paved the road in your neighborhoods, and it added up to a country. But when crisis hit, Trump's government abandoned America. We asked what we could do for our country. They looked for what they could take. But there's a truth written in every history book. If you break the sacred contract, the people make a revolution. All across America, the essential people are demanding a New Deal. Well, they call me the deal maker.
Ed Markey's desk was thrown out in the hall by the State House bosses. Markey's bill is now the law.
I'm Ed Markey. I'm running for Congress because I want to fight for the principles that I believe in. The bosses may tell me where to sit. No one tells me where to stand.
My father was a union leader. He taught me, don't beg for your rights, organize and take them. So in January, I was the first senator to write to Trump. I warned him we needed a plan. I talked to the Democrats and the Republicans. I told them we've got to save the fishermen. A month later, we had $300 million for our fishing industry. Trump wanted to cheap out, but I helped negotiate $600 a week for any American struggling to find their next gig. They thought the son of a milkman couldn't learn the rules. I made new ones. I don't need to get on the phone and talk to lobbyists to know what working people think. I get on the streets and I listen.
I've got a question for 1 million people. Do you want to freeze the arms race?
I put the deal on the table, but the people make it impossible to refuse. With 500 laws on the books, you think I'm going to stop now? They wish.
Green New Deal.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Ed Markey introduced their Green New Deal.
Stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process.
We got to absolutely crush Donald Trump in November. But if we're going to end this era of chaos, that won't be enough. We got to make sure President Biden signs the Green New Deal. We can't wait.
You got to have folks in the United States Senate who are willing to stand up for working people. That's who Ed Markey is. I need Ed Markey in the United States Senate.
We asked what we could do for our country. We went out. We did it. With all due respect, it's time to start asking what your country can do for you.
All right. Amazing. Now, I guess before I even move on to this, that ad was already amazing, and then on top, at the end, he remixes that JFK quote. I mean, this is somebody that not only deserves to win this race, but somebody I think we should maybe pay a little more attention to. Ed Markey, people try to attack him over certain votes he's had in the past, like 20 years ago. Okay, he had, some bad votes 30, 20 years ago. Who cares? Joe Kennedy has taken a ton of corporate money, didn't even support the decriminalization of marijuana until this year, because he said back in 2018, Kennedy said back in 2018 that he thinks marijuana, it's good that it's illegal because it allows the cops to search your car. And if you think I'm joking, look that up. Look that up. Look, Joe Kennedy, marijuana, search your car. Look that up. You will find that quote. It is crazy. And this is the guy that's claiming he's to the left of Ed Markey? So, obviously, Ed Markey deserves your support here. Let me show you a recent poll that gives me some hope. So, Markey leads Kennedy by 15 points in Massachusetts Senate primary. So, this is a University of Massachusetts Amherst UCVB poll. So, the reason why this is so, I mean, apart from the result, but the reason why this is so awesome is because back in, I believe, February, if I can find it here. So, wait, including leaners, Markey tops Kennedy 51 to 36, a 12-point increase of his February lead of 43 to 40. So, several months ago, it appeared like it was a close race. And I had also heard about either some other polling or some internal polling that Kennedy was actually ahead of Markey. But since the debates, there's been several debates now. I've covered at least, I think, 2 of them. I'm about to cover another one here. But there's been several debates. People are getting a little more familiar with Kennedy on the state level as opposed to just, in his district. And they clearly see a guy who's completely phony. I mean, if you watch any Joe Kennedy clip, it's like watching a man who, grew up watching people in his family on television doing politics, and he's just imitating that, and he doesn't actually stand for anything. Clearly, based on his record, he doesn't. He just pretends to. Now, going deeper into this poll, I wanted to bring these up because I find that these funny and interesting. So these were a couple of word clouds that came with the results of this poll. So what one word would you use to describe each of the following? So Ed Markey gets, at least in the positive sense, dedicated, good, old, progressive, steady. I don't know why experienced is in red. Is that supposed to be a negative? Experienced. Smart, liberal, decent, reliable. So I guess it's just a mix of red and blue here. But go down to Kennedy. Entitled, ambitious, young. These all just explain somebody who is a careerist. So this is the exact kind of politician you want to push out of Congress. You don't want people like this in power. People that are obsessed with their, first of all, entitled. Obviously, him being a Kennedy, the only reason he's even in this race. Young, I guess that could be taken negative or positive. I don't really know. Ambitious, though. Again, this is not about the opportunist, privileged, Kennedy. Rich is here. Here, smart. There's a positive one. Smart. But, clearly this is not somebody who's viewed as a person that cares about the average individual. Whereas, I think, dedicated, experienced, progressive, reliable, this is somebody that you can actually see is viewed based on what they've actually done or their existence in that state, being old, but viewed as somebody who's, at least a progressive, good politician as opposed to somebody who is just a careerist. Now, let me get to a couple of quick clips here. This is from the recent debate that they had, and Ed Markey here doing a solid job.
Congressman Kennedy, when he uses the word change, he means something different. He's changed his position on Medicare for all. He's changed his position on PROMESA, which is hollowing out Puerto Rico. He's changed his position on the issue of super PACs. He's changed his position on the racist fraternity. That's his own words, that he was in for 20 years, and he only left that fraternity 1 month before this campaign began.
So again, Kennedy doesn't have any real ideology, at least in the sense that he doesn't have any consistent record of standing up for the average person. Sunrise Movement says here, changes stance on, Medicare for all, Puerto Rico, super PACs, and, Ed Markey points all these out. But this is somebody who has just now recently in Kennedy pretended to be for the average individual when he has not been in the past. One more clip here from this debate.
I introduced the Green New Deal with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez a year and a half ago, so that we would have real environmental justice in our country as we solved the problem of climate change for the planet, that we would save all of creation by engaging in massive job creation. But Alexandria and I, we made sure in the Green New Deal, which was criticized, by the way, not just by Republicans and Fox News, but it was criticized by many Democrats as well, just going too far. Because we talked about intersectionality. We talked about frontline communities. We talked about people of color. We talked about how those who are in the most polluted situations invariably are the poorest. They're the immigrant families, and we could see that during the coronavirus. So when I introduced that bill, yeah, it was poo-pooed in certain circumstances, but it seems prescient today. And by the way, the same thing is true about Medicare for all. When I stood next to Bernie in 2017, introducing Medicare for all, Congressman Kennedy took 2 years to sign on to Medicare for all. That now looks like predictive of where we are right now. Millions of people have lost their health care. We're 47th in the world in life expectancy. We're 38th in health outcomes. Last year, 2/3 of all bankruptcies were because of health care bills. Medicare for all now looks like it's a bill that has its time, that has arrived, the same as the Green New Deal. That is the leadership that I provide, building movements across our country so that we can have the fundamental change which our country wants and needs.
So that is leadership. Standing up for issues when they are maybe unpopular, at least in some circles, but standing up for those issues, even though they're unpopular, but standing up for them because you know they are the right thing to do. Standing up for Medicare for all, standing up for the Green New Deal. That's what Ed Markey has done. Joe Kennedy just recently now, I think he supports Medicare for all of a sudden. The Green New Deal, I'm not even sure his position on that, but like we're talking about somebody who is, sometimes I feel like I'm talking to a wall because this is like, if you see, I wish I had actually some clips here of Kennedy, because if you see Kennedy, he is so phony. He is just your standard politician, just going where the wind blows, doesn't actually care about any of these issues, saying what he thinks might get him elected, chasing power. That's all he is doing. And the only reason, again, I have to mention this, the only reason he is challenging Ed Markey here is because his last name is Kennedy, which meant that he thought he had a shot in this race. And maybe he still does. I mean, the polls were close earlier in the year, but you see now when people actually are getting a taste of the differences between each candidate and what they've stood for, I mean, this is the result. Markey leads Kennedy by 15 points. So let's hope this carries. Let's hope this energy carries into September. If you're in Massachusetts, make sure you vote. I don't know how else to say it. Make sure you vote for Ed Markey.